This is the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris DeGaulle.
Chris DeGaulle. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris DeGaulle.
I'm joined now by Chris DeGaulle.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris DeGaulle.
The Chris DeGaulle podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Friday, the 14th day of July, and I thank you so much for downloading the Chris DeGaulle Show podcast. Coming up, our old friend Dr. Marty Makary returns to the show. There's a new report out by the WHO about aspartame. If you're a diet soda drinker, I won't bury the lead. It's not going to kill you. At least Dr. Makary doesn't think it is. But I do ask him about it, and just kind of talk about the whole notion of sweeteners generally. I'd like to take his pulse on a lot of things. The status of the healthcare system, all that we found out about COVID, a new report yesterday, a shocking report from, I think, the CDC on the effects of COVID socially and what it did to so many in terms of chemical dependency and alcoholism. It's hard not to lose my temper on that stuff, but we talk with him about that. Also, I will get into the testimony between John Kerry and Scott Perry of Pennsylvania. It was fantastic. John Kerry testifying on climate yesterday on Capitol Hill. Scott Perry ate his lunch. So we have some of that coming up and a lot of the other news of the day. It's a good one today. I think you're going to really enjoy it. I hope you'll check out the Harumph Society, doing a giveaway today. I've got another edition of the Harumph Society coming out today. Subscribe to this podcast so you never miss a minute. And if you get a second, if you could leave a written comment and a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or at Spotify, boy, I would owe you. I'd really appreciate it. Your word means more to your friends and family than mine does. So if you want to turn somebody onto the show, I hope that you will. Thanks for subscribing, for the 5-star reviews, the written reviews, the Harumph Society. It's all at chrisdegaule.com, by the way, if you're looking. Now, the guy that I want to encourage you to call if you buy your own health insurance is a guy named John Ruhlman. He is at usmedicalplan.com, and I'm telling you, if you pay for it out of pocket, you're missing out on saving potentially 30 to 60% on your health insurance costs. Now, I don't know if saving hundreds, perhaps thousands of dollars every year, or every month, I should say, sounds good to you, but I can tell you that I have a personal friend. He's got a family of 4. His daughter has some special health concerns, and then him and his wife and other son, together, their health insurance plan, he wrote me, he said, Chris, I can't believe it. I've got better coverage now, and I'm saving $2,000 a month. That's astounding. You know, if you're a younger person and you buy your own health insurance, not calling John means you're missing out on the possibility that you could get an insurance plan. You know, there's insurance plans out there that pay you if you go to the hospital. Pay you. You get a check cut. There are insurance programs out there. He knows 80 different private insurers. There are insurers that if you get hospitalized, they'll cut you checks and reimburse you for the time you're missing at work. If you have employees and you buy their insurance for them, you've got to call John and see if he can help you out. And look, if the answer is the worst case scenario, if you call John, is you've got the best insurance out there, I can't beat what you have. That's worst case. And isn't that reassuring if that's what you find? He's John Ruhlman and his team at usmedicalplan.com. Make sure you tell him Chris said hi. usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. They'll take great care of you. Friend Congressman Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, the chair of the House Freedom Caucus, put on quite a clinic yesterday with the haughty, horse-faced John Kerry, the windsurfer. Is that right, Fast Eddie? I'm told he was pretty impressive yesterday.
He was, man. I just really wish he was my congressman. He was great.
Want to listen to a little of it? How about we head into the weekend with a little inspired commentary from our friend, House Freedom Caucus Chair Scott Perry with John Kerry. Perry versus Kerry. New sitcom, perhaps. Perry versus Kerry in the House hearings on climate. Good. Let's go for it.
In an attempt to get to net zero by 2050, do you support the administration's goal of cutting U.S. emissions in half by 2030?
Yes, I do.
Secretary, in 1997, the Senate voted 95-0, including you and then Senator Biden, in favor of the Byrd-Hagel resolution, which resolved that the U.S. shouldn't cut emissions until China, Mexico, India, Brazil, South Korea, and other so-called developing nations cut emissions as well. Do you remember that?
I do very, very well because I was managing it on the floor of the Senate.
Since 97, have emissions from China, India, and Mexico all increased?
Yes, as they have from the United States.
And global emissions have continued to increase as well, right?
Yes.
Have any of those countries submitted a credible plan to get to net zero emissions by 2050?
Which countries?
Let's just go with China, India, or Mexico.
No.
It seems that, have you abandoned your position that those other nations would cut emissions before Americans would have to make choices between the groceries on their table and paying for, for these policies?
I think the reality is that the world changed in that period of time. Let me explain.
Okay, so you voted that way, but
let me explain to you the vote, because I did manage this on the floor. And I know exactly what happened because I'm the one who said to our colleagues, I think everybody ought to vote for this. And the reason was that it fundamentally had the message that it's not fair. The one we were talking about earlier with the chairman, it's not fair for us to be reducing, and China, which was producing 3 times more emissions than us, and then producing goods that come into our country from that dirty power, and we have a problem. So we wanted to address that. But we knew not every aspect of that piece of legislation is what you all call, we all call, a message. It was a message vote. And the vote was clear. We wanted other people to join us in the effort to reduce emissions.
Okay, fair enough.
That hasn't happened sufficiently.
It hasn't happened sufficiently.
Exactly right. So, so it was ceremonial. It was ceremonial, and you continue to punish us. You continue to drive policy in the country, here in the United States, to punish us, while you acknowledge that everything that you've ever said about other developed nations, reducing their demand for fossil fuel energy, there's never been an exacting standard one physically placed on any other nation to live by the same rules you're insisting we live by. I got to tell you, I have friends in both the automotive sector and in the energy sector. And I will tell you that these two sectors, unlike any other in the country, are being squeezed in the most unrealistic way you can possibly know. Get next to somebody who's in the car sales business, or get next to somebody who's in the energy production business. And those two industries, who oddly don't have a lot to talk about with one another yet, which is really weird, wouldn't you think? I mean, if there were ever two industries that would be at the table together talking about what the hell is happening to us, what are we being forced into, they need one another. Well, certainly the auto industry is going to need the electric industry. As I've pointed out repeatedly on this show, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, if you're going to force us all to make and purchase electric vehicles to drive and then plug them in onto a grid that is already not sustaining the current power supply we need, it makes no sense. Automotive makers, you talk to guys that are selling cars right now, it is mind-blowing. Do you know that there is a structure in place from the federal government to their companies, respectively? So the large automaker name you know, pick the automaker's name you know, our federal government will begin levying tiers of fines on them over the years as they continue to sell gas-powered or internal combustion engine, they're starting to call them ICE engines. They will be credited with selling plug-in cars or hybrid cars or straight electric cars. They will be penalized for every car they sell that is an ICE engine, an internal combustion engine. There's a structure in place. I talked with one particular car dealer yesterday who had a meeting with with a confab of about 20 other dealers across the country that sell the cars that he sells. And the automakers for this particular brand, this particular line, and I can confirm this because this comes from multiple car makers, they're all having these discussions about these credits. And do you know now that they are I'm not making this up, automakers are buying credits from Tesla. This is how insane this is. You don't even know this is going on. I certainly didn't. Automakers in the United States Tesla has got such favored status as a plug-in car maker. And because it's straight electric cars, they're given effectively government credits that they bank for their tax credits. They're rewarded. They're basically handed money, government money, taxpayer money, to sell electric cars, which I just read a story yesterday at the Epic Times that says they're not moving cars at Tesla, but neither here nor there. In preparation for the traditional internal combustion engine to be sold, many car dealers, parent companies, are buying credits from Tesla just to stay out of the red as they continue to sell what customers want, the traditional internal combustion engine, but they get punished for doing so. So dealers, car makers and car dealers are going to be increasingly pressured to push on you plug-in cars, electric cars, or at bare minimum hybrid cars. And every time you go, well, but I would like the SUV or the truck that's the internal combustion. It's to their advantage by sheer government punishment. It's to their advantage to make sure you don't buy that internal combustion engine. So we're coming to a day, said another way, where car dealers will be effectively, and their parent companies will be punished if they let you drive off the lot with an internal combustion engine. This guy said it to me yesterday plainly. He said, Chris, it's coming. It's coming way too fast, and the country's not ready. It can't be stopped. It's coming. I asked him, I said, what about all the people that tow boats? And what about all the people that tow RVs? You know, are we ready? Is this ready? He said, no, it's not ready. He said, about 80 miles. You know, he goes, you know, most trucks that could tow a boat or a trailer, you get about 80 miles on an electrical charge right now. He said, now the technology will advance, much like charging your phone. You know, they've come up with the new bricks that charge your phone or your iWatch or your Apple Watch a lot faster. It will advance. And I said to this guy, I go, I don't want to be just negative for negative's sake about electric cars. I really don't. Like if they work, if they truly work and they're to our advantage, great. You know, if they cost us less money ultimately, that's fine. I said, but I just don't believe they're as effective as an internal combustion engine yet. Am I right? He said, you're absolutely right. I said, do you think they'll get there? He said, I do. But do I think we're anywhere close to it yet? No. He says, 2030, maybe? I think we can start realistically talking about cutting charging time in half. He said, but right now, he drives an electric car. And he says, right now, he said, I cannot. The infrastructure in my residential home, I had a guy come out and special install 2 electrical charging ports for cars in my home. And he said, if I added a third, I would need a commercial grade install. Like I would have to take my residential home and upgrade it to a commercial level power supply. And this guy does pretty well. And he said to me, Chris, I couldn't afford to do it in my home. I couldn't afford to do it. So prices are astronomically high. The efficacy of these electric vehicles are not there yet. Yet they may get there. But having said all that, and I point to the electric vehicle as just but one. I mean, the gas-powered stove is another they're going after. They want us on electric stove. We've gone over this and over this. And this is Scott Perry's point, and this is the silliness of John Kerry. This is the vapidity of this whole position. That the American public must continue to embrace electric in the goal of reducing our emissions. We must go electric everything, electric everything, electric everything. But we have a power grid that cannot support electric everything because we have a power grid that can't support the power needs we have now. And so what's government doing to power? Now, see, this is the other insidious thing. At the very same time, they're forcing industries like cars to go electric or punish them if they don't. They're punishing electric power providers, the people that power your homes, the people that would power the grid to charge these cars you got to go buy. They're punishing them and saying, you can't build new coal-fired power plants. You got to take offline the coal-fired power plants you have. Not only do you not build new, you got to take offline the old. Build more solar, build more wind. It's obscene. It's absurd. Any thinking person understands this is national suicide. And it's all born out of this expectation that we're going to lead the way in clean energy technology. But as Scott Perry points out, the hypocrisy of the notion is so stupid because John Kerry's acknowledged they've done nothing but ceremonial chit-chat on the floor of the halls of Congress with other countries we've not said boo to them about what are you doing to hold yourselves to the same unbelievable standard you're holding us to. What are you guys doing? Answer, they're not. This continued. Keep listening. This is good stuff.
Now, Secretary, in 2015 at the Paris Climate Conference, you said that if all industrial nations go to zero emissions, it wouldn't be enough. And then at the White House's Climate Day in January of 21, you said almost 90% of the planet's emissions come from outside the U.S. We could go to zero tomorrow, and the problem isn't solved. And in April 21, you told the Washington Post that even the U.S. and China going to zero emissions tomorrow won't solve the climate's problem. Then in April of 21, you said that global net zero is not enough and that CO2 must be removed from the atmosphere. How much is the correct amount of CO2?
Oh, yes.
Let me explain to you, if I can, so you understand exactly what I said.
Let me understand. You're not smart enough to understand me.
Not quite exactly what I was saying.
Can you
what
just
I'm
tell me
saying,
what
let
the
me
correct
tell you what I'm
amount
saying.
is?
I'm going to tell you what the correct. Here's how
Good.
it works.
I can't wait.
Because
Here's
we
how it
have
works.
put, I'd forget the exact number of tons,
Arrogant
millions of
punks.
tons of CO2 and other greenhouse gases are now in the atmosphere. They're there. And every day we're adding more. And so every day the heat is going up, and we have to figure out how we're going to
Every day the heat is going
the
up.
monster here.
Every day
The
the heat
only
is
way
going
to
up.
do that is to reduce emissions on an ongoing basis to get control on the current level of emissions that we have created.
But
then,
what is
then
But
to
what is
actually
the correct,
suck,
sir,
you're
with all
gonna
due
have to-
respect, you've been through
Let
this
me just
before.
finish.
What is the correct amount? I don't want to spend a bunch of time about a history lesson about things that people don't care about.
Well, it changes every day. I can't tell you
the correct
exactly what
amount
it's
change
in the
there?
yes,
So-
it does.
So,
Because we're-
Secretary, you probably know that for approximately 200 million years, what's the parts per million now? About 400, right? Can we
It's
agree
over
on that?
400.
All right.
It's about
for about 200
420.
million years, 2,000 parts per million. Did Mother Nature get it wrong for 200 million years?
Here's the difference, Congressman. The difference is, yes, there were periods which all the scientists who deal with climate acknowledge that there have been moments on the planet, which is billions of years old, in which there were greater heat and there was greater.
Tell me the
carbon
difference
dioxide.
quickly. I've got a
The
limited
difference
amount of
is
time.
human beings are creating.
Okay, so
that's the difference.
so human beings are
We are
about
creating.
We're the
300,000
problem.
years old, but during these periods of time where it was 2,000 parts per million, life existed. As a matter of fact, we're in
not
one
people,
of the lowest
not
periods.
human
Mr.
beings walking
Secretary,
around.
We're in one
No.
of the lowest periods of carbon in the atmosphere in not only recorded history, in the history of life existing on the planet.
You know, I'm not going to spend a lot of time parsing the theology of this because I know that there are a lot of you out there, armchair theologians, who would love to dive into this thing and have a biblical discussion about what these two men are discussing. I'm not going to do that here. I am not. That's going to take somebody smarter than me. But I will just back away and say, do you hear the arrogance? Do you hear it? And I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you believe about creation. I don't care Big Bang. I don't care. Do you hear the arrogance? And do you hear, most importantly, do you hear out of this man what he really admits? He gives up the ghost here. Scott Perry gets him to give up the ghost. And it is what? What's the real nugget in this? The admission here. If he exposed the actual truth about this entire movement. The biggest problem is what?
He doesn't know how much. He doesn't know the number at
well,
all.
One, he doesn't know the number. That's right. There is no optimal.
It's always constantly changing. It's constantly changing. It's always changing. I don't have the.
So I've asked this for years. What is the optimal temperature of planet Earth, Mr. Kerry? What is the optimal, like, these people that believe we control the Earth's climate like a thermostat? Our activity, our actions control the Earth. It's like when you back away from this and don't, it's a client scientist, every client, hundreds of climate scientists. We talk about client scientist. Every time we say client scientists, ooh, client scientist. I have, quite frankly, you throw client scientists out there, that's as good as a, I don't know, like, you get a bunch of celebrities together for a Feed the World concert, singing behind a microphone together. Like, okay, fine. Client scientists say, as though a group of client scientists can't get it wrong. I love it. Like, if you notice that we treat the study of climate science as though it is it's its own hallowed institution that we're not to criticize. We can't. I'm a climate scientist. Oh, well, I'm a realtor. And? I mean, can you imagine if somebody said, the value of this house is $1 million? And I said, well, every other house on this street's value is only $450,000. Every single one of them. You're saying this house is worth $1 million? That's right. You're crazy. That's way too high. I'm a realtor. No one else gets to say this. Literally, no. I'm a talk show host. I'm a dentist. I'm a clerk at Wawa. I will not be challenged. But somehow when you say, I'm a climate scientist, allow me to bow. That's always what these people say when you challenge them at the highest level, when you back away and take the 30,000-foot view of their argument. They always say, hundreds of climate scientists agree. Yeah, I suppose if my entire existence, my entire income, all of my funding, everything about my profession depended on grant money flowing in for me to continue to make the argument that man is warming the planet, I suppose hundreds of those people would probably be all on the same page too. If that's where your money's coming from. Sure. That's not hard to understand. That's like, saying hundreds of gazelle agree lions are dangerous. That's it. I mean, sure, of course, yes. That's true, but that doesn't mean lions don't have their place in the ecosystem. Just, hey, hundreds of gazelle agree we should get rid of lions. They should all be exterminated right now. No more lions, says hundreds of gazelles. Hundreds of climate scientists agree. I don't give a rat's ass. What he admits in this answer is, the answer to my question is, he admits that you're the problem and so am I. It's humans. Scott Perry got him in the ultimate trap. So the Earth has been warming, dramatically warming and cooling and changing forever. You acknowledge that. It's been much warmer, in fact, lots warmer. What is the optimal temperature, Mr. Kerry? Oh, I don't know. What's the optimal amount of CO2? Oh, it's always changing every day. I don't know. Okay, so what's the difference between then and now? Well, humans, that's the difference, us. That's the ball game. That's it. That's it. Boil it all down to that. The problem is you. You need to be controlled. You. He acknowledges he doesn't know. He acknowledges the past. He acknowledges everything about the past that was warmer and cooler and volatile and, oh, it's all stipulated, He acknowledges that nobody else on planet Earth is living by the same standards he wants us to live by. He acknowledges he doesn't know what is optimal. He acknowledges all that, but the one thing he also acknowledges is you're the problem. We've never had humans walking around doing all this before. I want to control the humans. The problem is the people. We got to get a control of the people. I see. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Kerry. Actually, this is refreshing honesty. You don't know squat. You don't even have a target goal. You don't know where we're going. You're not holding any of our shared human beings on planet Earth to the same standard you're holding us to. You just know that we're the problem, and you'd like the power to manage us. Isn't that nice for you? A little more Perry. It's good stuff.
In December of 2022, you told the Washington Post we need to remove 1.6 trillion tons of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere via direct air capture. The cost for that is about $1,000 per ton, or $1.6 quadrillion. Now, you said you didn't know, but since 2015, since the last El Nino, about 500 billion tons have been emitted into the atmosphere. During that same period of time, 2015, if you look at the temperature graph, this is from NOAA. The temperature has gone down. Show the next slide. This is from NASA satellite data. Temperature has gone down. You want to have the American taxpayers, my constituents that are having a hard time afford their groceries, pay for a car, buy a new home, spend $1.6 quadrillion to fix a problem that A, doesn't exist, and as a matter of fact, you might be exacerbating because it's unknown. It is unknown at this time the low level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that might actually destroy life. Because plant life all depends, as you know, Secretary, plant life all depends on CO2. And when we kill it, then we're done too. I yield the balance.
Congressman, let me just say that I don't agree with what you're saying out there for any number of reasons. I don't have time to go into all of them now, but I'll just tell you point blank that the difference between the periods you're looking at in terms of heat, et cetera, and human input is night and day, number one. Number two, why do you think 195 countries in the world, their prime ministers, their presidents...
Because they're grifting like you are, sir.
That's a pretty shocking statement, that you believe that all the scientists in the world are grifters. Honestly.
See what they do?
Not all scientists agree with you, Mr. Secretary.
98% of all the scientists in the world.
Science isn't about agreement. It's not about consensus.
Bingo,
you know that.
Bingo. Would you please?
Harumph!
Yes.
Harumph! Harumph! I didn't get a harumph out of that guy. Give the governor harumph. Harumph! You watch your ass.
That's just fabulous. I don't know that I've heard anybody do it quite like Scott Perry did it. Has he been listening? That's wonderful. What a haughty, arrogant moron, John Kerry. Called out and exposed by Congressman Scott Perry, chair of the House Freedom Caucus. He had no, scientists agree with me. 98% of scientists agree. Science is not about consensus, Mr. Kerry. That's not science. We don't vote in science. We study science. Scientific method requires that you continue to challenge a theory. You try to poke holes in it. You actively try to poke holes in it until it is demonstrably true, and there is no question that the thing being posed in the scientific theory is ironclad and true, because every single scientist has come at it from every single plausible direction, and they can't disprove a thing. That is not the case with your made-up, fictitious notion that carbon dioxide created by man is warming the planet, and that's all there is to say about it. 98% of people agree with me. It's not a vote. There are plenty of people who disagree with you, sir. And as I just explained, those who do agree with you, 98% of them, where's 98% of their funding come from? Perry's right. They're grifters. They're making, that's just, I can't believe. Grifters, what do you mean grifters? I mean the people that you take money from, sir. Where's your money coming from? Who died and made you climate czar? When did you get that appointment? Where's the cash flow coming from for Mr. Kerry? You imagine? He's been a United States Senator, a failed presidential candidate, and now he spends his days flying around in his private jet calling himself the climate czar of the United States. What the hell is that? That's as silly and made up as Rachel Levine being a man and an admiral. Or a woman and an admiral, I should say. These are just made up. They just wear little crowns. They just put little pretend. It's like you go to Las Vegas and you see the girls running around with the sashes. This bride-to-be. He may as well just wear a sash that says climate czar or Rachel Levine, admiral. They just give themselves these things. They don't mean anything. They didn't earn anything. They don't know what they're doing. I'm an admiral. I'm a czar. Sure you are. Have a seat. Dirty power. Dirty power. How are we gonna power an electrical grid with everybody driving electric cars and trucks? How are we gonna do it? How are we gonna get there? You think the wind's gonna do it? Seriously, because here's the thing, the wind doesn't always blow, and the clouds happen a lot, and you cannot, at present, they can't figure out how to store the energy created by wind. So it's like, when it's blowing, great. When it's sunny, great. You can't store it and live off of it in reserve. Do you understand that? Does everybody get that? I'm not sure everybody does. I think this audience probably gets it. Wind and solar's a noble, admirable thing. Fine, make it part of an energy portfolio. You can't store it like nuclear. You can't store it like coal firepower. It's not constant, in other words. Like, use it or lose it, is my point. So when it's deadly cold, as we've experienced, and it's cloudy, and there's no wind blowing, we'll die if our energy grid is dependent on that crap. Can't happen. Get close to people in the energy production field. Get close to people in auto sales and auto manufacturing. It will blow your mind. In fact, I have a story. Yes. Dressed in red as a traditional show of solidarity, the new United Auto Workers president, Sean Fain, met with members and employees outside Factory Zero in Hamtramck, wherever that is, Michigan, ahead of all-important negotiations with the big three automakers. UAW president says big three layoffs are under the guise of EV transition on eve of negotiations. So the UAW is, they're in the middle of negotiations with the automakers who are hemorrhaging money. We already told you that Ford is set to lose $3 billion as they transition by force. They don't want to, but they have to. So they're starting to lay people off. UAW boss warns of race to the bottom in electric vehicle transition. The switch to electric engine jobs, battery production, other EV manufacturing cannot become a race to the bottom, said the UAW president. Not only is the federal government not using its power to turn the tide, they're actively funding the race to the bottom with billions in public money. These companies are extremely profitable and will continue to make money hand over fist whether they're selling combustion engines or EVs, yet the workers get a smaller and smaller piece of the pie. Electric vehicle jobs, like the 7,500 that will be created in Kentucky and Tennessee, are low-road jobs that offer no consideration for wages, working conditions, union rights, or retirement security. You UAW people, you're the ones that should have been most vehemently fighting this. So you and I are going to be punished, or at least the people that sell us cars are going to be punished. The people making cars are being punished. The auto salespeople are being punished. The energy companies are being punished. The only people getting rich here are people like John Kerry. Everybody else is losing out. Everybody else is losing ground. Your means of getting around will be less. People's means of income is less. People's everything about this exchange is taking from you and me because, as John Kerry just admitted, we're the problem. We're the enemy. We've got to be managed, don't you see? But John Kerry's doing just fine. Scott Perry was right. You're grifters. You're all getting fat on cash while we're all doing with less. It's insidious. And really, what this testimony shows is all that he doesn't know. All that he doesn't know, all that he admits he doesn't know. Carbon dioxide is a nutrient. It is not a pollutant. Carbon dioxide is necessary. It's part of biology. It's photosynthesis. Plants use carbon dioxide as a nutrient. They manufacture oxygen, which you and I inhale. Then we exhale carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is 400 parts per million of the Earth's atmosphere. It's nonsense that it's negligible in terms of its measurement in warming the planet anyway. It's so stupid. The whole thing is such a scam. But boy, do people, it's a religious thing with so many people. They don't want to hear it. If you put that on Facebook today, anything I just said, you'd always get some snarky reply. Hundreds of climate scientists say. I know. And I would, honestly, that's how I would respond to this. Hundreds of gazelles think lions should be eradicated from the earth, too. Okay, it's time to start thinking about your financial future. Never too early. Here we are in early 2023. What are your goals? Have you visited your financial situation with a pro that knows what they're doing, making plans for your future yet? Well, if you haven't, may I recommend Jason Perrett to you. Jason is a financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning, and he wanted me to talk with you in this audience. He values this audience. He's a listener of this podcast, and he said, I want to reach your audience. I want to help them plan their financial future, providing financial services to people who want to truly achieve financial independence, and he doesn't care where you are. If you are a accomplished entrepreneur, if you're a professional, a retiree, even if you're a young person and you just want to start the lifelong goal of financial independence and you don't quite know where to get started, Jason can do that for you. He's a fiduciary. He's dedicated to providing clients with complete wealth management and investment services along with highly personalized professional assistance. Jason will regularly revisit your plan, and that's one of the key things about this business is regularly checking in and assessing where things are, making sure you're on track, assessing your risk tolerance, strategies to provide you the high level of service that you would expect from someone in this position. And you can call him anytime you'd like, 816-394-8800, 8117. He's extremely available and accessible at all times. 816-394-8117. That's Jason Perrette, financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning, 1717 Paddock Drive in Kearney, Missouri. It doesn't matter where you live in the country. If you're listening to my voice and you need some help with financial planning, you want somebody that you know you're going to be on board with, because you listen to this show, Jason's your man, all right? So it's Jason at eaglewealthplanning.com. His website is linked on mine at chrisstigall.com if you'd like to go there and link up. Securities advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. So the breaking news yesterday, breaking news from the Washington Post. Breaking news, mind you. It came into my mailbox, my email box. Breaking news! Americans really did drink more during the pandemic. New data shows, and alcohol-related deaths skyrocketed. U.S. consumption of alcohol, which had already been increasing for years, accelerated during the pandemic as Americans grappled with the stress and isolation. Breaking news. I tell you, I read those things, and it's difficult for me to restrain my anger, my rage. I really battle with it to this day when I see headlines like this. When people write this so casually, like, oh my, we really screwed kids up. Suicide, depression, chemical dependency really ticked up when we... What the hell did you lunatics think would happen to the human condition when you did what you did to us? And you did, and you know who you are. And I remember, and I was talking to a friend of mine about this over the weekend, and he's like me. He and his wife are exactly like me. Like, they remember names, they remember who was on what side of this debate, and they don't forget. They're like elephants. Me too. They got long memories about this, and so do I. I don't get over this. And he and I were marveling over the number of people who we live amongst who just seem to act like it didn't even happen. Like, yeah, that was a thing once. I don't know either. Yeah, we've moved on. Whatever. It was, in my estimation, the most troublesome, the most damaging, the most demoralizing, the most destructive time I believe that we will ever live. I mean, hopefully I live another few decades, but so far, at my time on Earth, almost 50 years, I have not lived through a more embarrassing time as a culture here in the United States than that. Now, look, don't misunderstand. I'm not comparing it to segregation and racism and other things of the past. I'm talking about in my modern American life. I have never, I don't think there's a more shameful time in modern, hear me when I say modern, there's not a more shameful time in modern American history than COVID. I will continue to stand by that until, God forbid, I'm ever proven wrong in the future by something worse. Although I mean, short of people just being rounded up and jailed, which I'm not so sure is far off for our speech, but short of that, I don't think there was anything worse. And why people just, I don't know if people just don't want to acknowledge that it happened. We were assaulted. Our nation and those in power assaulted us. We were held prisoner in our own home. We were turned on one another. And I feel sometimes like there's some people that either choose to just ignore it or forget it or act like it didn't happen or move on. I mean, I don't mean I wake up every day trying to settle scores about it, but I don't have time for mainstream media outlets to report breaking news. Americans really did destroy themselves by drinking too much during the pandemic. Isolation and stress really caused people chemical dependency. Of course it did. And compassionate, decent human beings like, yes, I'll pat myself on the back, me, saw it then and said so then. I took the calls from people crying then. Never in my career have I had people call a show crying. Scared for their futures, scared for their safety, scared for their jobs, crying like that time in history. Never. Never have I seen kids wither on the vine in human history like that. Never. I've never seen suicide in my community like this. Never. Never seen churches close. Never seen businesses close. I'd never seen perfect strangers scream at me in the aisle of a store for not behaving the way they thought I should to, quote, keep everyone safe, wearing a mask. Never seen anything like it. parking outside safely away from the restaurant, people in masks coming out to your car, careful not to touch the food delivered to your car door as restaurants hang on for dear life. That was such a god-awful, destructive time in history, and it wasn't but just a couple of years ago. And most people are like, well, whatever, it happened. I personally, and I've talked about this with you before, this is why I'm not in politics. This is why I don't run for office, because if I were running a national campaign, this is all I'd run on. Almost singularly and obsessively. Retelling this story and relitigating this story and reminding everybody that would listen to me of what happened to this country. But as we found, and as just seems to be true, when it comes to the issue of COVID, we found it with DeSantis, we found it with Trump, the leading candidates in the Republican field. When the story comes up, I mean, they've kind of tried to snipe at one another about their record on COVID, and what we found is it's just not resonating for either one of them. Neither one of them seems to get any traction talking about their successes or failures with COVID and who was on the right side or wrong side. It doesn't, even amongst Republicans, it just doesn't seem to resonate as a thing. So I don't know how this lands on other people when they see breaking news. Americans really did drink more during the pandemic, new data shows, and alcohol-related deaths skyrocketed. I don't know if average people go, well, that's interesting. I didn't see that coming. Or if they think to themselves, well, like me, yeah, that seems pretty obvious, and move on about their day. That's a horribly destructive bit of news that just happened. It just happened, and it was self-inflicted. You understand? It's not like it was an accident. This didn't happen accidentally. We did it. We created mass dependency and mass suicide, mass depression, mass financial hardship. We did it culturally to ourselves. We allowed it to happen. And, well, I don't know. Everybody seems to have moved on. I haven't moved on. I haven't moved on.
Already in place, and those announced today will be enforced. And law enforcement and state agencies will be stepping up enforcement efforts, issuing citations and fines, and possible regulatory actions for repeat offenders. It has to be our collective responsibility to protect our communities, our healthcare workers, and our most vulnerable Pennsylvanians from COVID-19.
Right.
That is our collective responsibility.
I mean, I made and sold the Great Turkey Rebellion shirts because at one point we had a governor who was ostensibly threatening people from traveling to their relatives and crossing state lines, in or out of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I spent a Thanksgiving talking with out-of-state relatives about whether or not they thought it was risky to cross the border into Pennsylvania to have Thanksgiving dinner with me. That happened in the United States. I had conversation with relatives about whether or not it was risky that they may get crossways with law enforcement for crossing from their state into mine.
Chris, we looked this up together. We were talking post one of those shows. We were both in the studio. I had a guy get very angry with me it was an indoor golf event that previous Saturday. And I said they can't stop you from traveling, from crossing state lines. They can't do that. And he's like, oh, yes, they can. And he got belligerent about it. Like he was in my face, almost like finger to my chest saying, yes, they can. And I said, no, they can't.
Yeah. And I hope you never forget that little piece of excrement's name in exchange. I hope you never forget him. And I hope he's regularly reminded about his behavior. Seriously, I'd love to. I wish I'd had that interaction. I'd love to remind a guy like that today. I'd like to ask him today, did that seem reasonable to you? Maybe he still thinks so, which is the problem, actually, which is why this is still so much a story and why it's still so important. Of course, it's as old as time. Population control is impossible without mass fear. And by the way, the fact that doctors cooperated in this is disturbing as hell, and they did. So many doctors. Social media. You know what I think sometimes? I think that was so disturbing that people really can't deal with it. And they would just pretend. It's like post-traumatic stress. You know, we just let's just let's just plug our ears and pretend it didn't happen. It was too uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about how close we were to just being culled like cattle. That's the only thing I can figure out why more people aren't, like, why their blood pressure doesn't rise every time the subject comes up. They just don't want to believe it happened here. Nah, it wasn't that. It's not all that, Chris. You're making too big a deal. It's not about controlling the masses. It's not about mass fear. It was for a time, and everybody was scared for their health, but it was for our own good, and it was destructive as hell. It was a fear-based manipulation, and it destroyed lives. And we're still feeling the effects of it. It destroyed children and families and businesses. It was mass manipulation. And government officials and medical professionals colluded and conspired and worked in concert to put fear and control into you, and I will never get over it. I will never forgive it. Never. Breaking news. Alcoholism really ticked up during... You don't say. Of course it did. Drunk, depressed, scared, dependent. And then you listen to the testimony of people like John Kerry and you understand. We're the problem, after all. We're the problem. We're much more easily managed if we're all scared and drunk and drug-addled and dependent and suicidal and ambitiousless. After all, we are the problem, aren't we? John Kerry said so. What does this mean? From Axios, the Associated Press has entered into a new deal with OpenAI. That's the parent company of Chat GPT. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about Chat GPT. I assume a lot of you, most of you probably know what that is. If you don't, I'm shorthanding this, but artificial intelligence, obviously, it's the ability to use programs that, I didn't even know this. I saw this online the other day. Google already does this in some sense when you're writing an email. There's a little icon. I didn't even know this existed. It's one of those little tips I saw pop up on Instagram. Somebody said, hey, if you don't know what to write, you want to ask your boss for a raise or whatever, click on this little icon below and type, I want to ask my boss for a raise, and there's already a program in Google that will write out a full letter for you as if it's you requesting a raise from your boss. That's, artificial intelligence, basically. And so there are programs now, and, teachers, professors are trying to figure out how to thwart it and combat it. Write an essay on the importance of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. And this thing will crank out hundreds of words paper on the importance of Abraham Lincoln. And it's all original. It doesn't duplicate itself. So, if I ask Chat GPT to do it and Eddie asks Chat GPT to do it, it will crank out two different products that would look distinctly different. And so everybody's trying to figure out now, how do we navigate what is your work versus Chat GPT? So when I read that the Associated Press has partnered with Chat GPT, the deal marks one of the first official news-sharing agreements made between major U.S. news company and artificial intelligence firm. You know how they talk all the time about fake news, and they talk all the time about misinformation, disinformation? We're not going to air that here because of misinformation and disinformation. So the Associated Press is now partnering with an artificial intelligence platform? So then what? In theory, you could be reading, if we're not already, reading news stories written by computers? Not even written by human beings? And then can that be trusted? I mean, what is a reporter? A reporter is the eyes and ears. The reporter is the investigator. The reporter is the witness that tells you the who, what, where, when, why. The news industry is grappling with ways to best leverage artificial intelligence to improve output while protecting its work from being used to train AI algorithms without permission or compensation. Actually, I'm not, well, of course, what goes into an AI algorithm is largely what matters, and leftists control that by and large. So what I was about to say at first was, I'm not so sure the news being delivered by a computer wouldn't be better for us than a lot of leftists we see on TV right now, but the people that make these programs are leftists, so what spits out of an AI-produced news story is basically intelligence that's been pumped into it by leftists. So, said another way, a left-winger asks Chat GPT to write a news story. It will still be written by the artificial intelligence program. It will still be written through the prism of a leftist's point of view. It won't be a truly neutral thing because leftists still program it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like the AI will now spit something back to you. They will write a story based on history as the AP has written it.
That's right. That's right. I can't get my head wrapped around news being written by a computer, though. Like even, just setting aside the biases, how does AI report? I mean, I understand given background and facts, AI can churn out a document about something that is already known, but the whole point of news is effectively reporting on things unknown, isn't it? I mean, the idea of we consume news to learn about new things that are happening. News, that's the root word, news. So how does AI write news stories about things it doesn't have input on yet, only drawing from background? Like, can AI write about a collapse on I-95 when a bridge falls? Like, how does AI do that? Write a story about a thing that just happened, AI. I don't know that it can yet, or maybe it can. I don't know.
Could you try this? You could say no, of course, it's yours. The Harumph Society, the newsletter. Could you say this is how many words that the newsletter typically is, and I want you to write about this and include something that is brand new to that day? Could you try that?
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. It that never occurred to me. that could make my load easier, I'll tell you that. I know. See, now a bunch of harumphers are going to wonder if is that really Stegall writing that or not? Now you've already put it out there in their heads now, Fast Eddie. The fastest growing newsletter. No, that is real 100% all me, ladies and gentlemen. I don't want for a second you to think that's AI generated, just so we're clear. I'll never take that shortcut. I still don't think, by the way, if you've watched any of these videos, and some of them are weird, some of the creepy, like the guy down in Florida, the mayor of Miami, has released some campaign video. I guess he's running for president too or some such. I forget his name even. But I guess he announced he's running for president. He has AI campaign commercials. So they can effectively take your image and, the computer can redigitize your mouth and facial features and everything along with your recorded voice to make it look as though you're saying something on a screen, looking into a camera. And this will be perfected over time to be probably indistinguishable, which is scary. I mean, we've talked about this before. The technology will advance. It probably already, I know it exists, but I don't think it's good yet. The technology exists that you could technically get several monologues that sound like me from AI. But just because they sound like me or close to me, they still clumsily string together words. It's obviously not authentic, organic human speech. You can hear it. Even if the tonality sounds like me, you say that's not quite the way he'd say it. If you're familiar with your favorite show or host or whatever, yeah, it sounds like them, but it sounds like them held hostage or something. It's stilted, kind of weird. They'll perfect it. It will get better. And that's what's so kind of through the looking glass about the whole thing is someday, you can imagine in the very near future, you'll be watching things online and you have absolutely no idea if you're even watching a real person saying real words or not. Or if it's wholesale manufactured to look like the person saying it. It's their words, but they never once actually sat down and recorded the thing you're watching. So the Associated Press has partnered with this technology officially. What does that mean? I don't know what I think about that. I mean, are we in any more danger of propaganda and misinformation from the media with the computers generating it than the talking heads that do it at present? Not really. That doesn't threaten me. You know what I mean? Like, I will always watch the news with skepticism no matter how it's delivered. So whether a computer is delivering it or whether anchors are delivering it, I'll be skeptical and apply it to my reality just the same, right? It's not like I go, oh, well, I trust it now because the computer said. No. Maybelline taps bearded bald man to sell lip gloss to women on Amazon Prime Day. Maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline. Never looked like a more apt slogan than in recent marketing videos with the latest bearded male partners for the long-lasting makeup brand. Why didn't I get in on this, Fast Eddie?
That's Prime, man. Prime money.
I could have done this. In spite of the recent massive backlash against trans TikToker Dylan Mulvaney, whose partnership with Bud Light tanked the brand, Maybelline has decided to advertise their makeup products with bearded men applying lip gloss on TikTok. The bald man sporting a rhinestone beret in his thick beard applies lip gloss, talking about its staying power, and encourages people to go buy Maybelline on Amazon. Maybelline listed as a Gen Z top beauty brand by Glossy, whatever the hell that is, in 2019 and 2021. It's likely that Maybelline was ready for the backlash since they already saw a wave of it when they partnered with Dylan Mulvaney, who made his career off of posting TikTok videos documenting his gender transition. Based on that, it's impossible to conclude that Maybelline was doing anything here other than asking for more backlash. Maybe them making women angry on the internet is good for their brand. It is interesting. The backlash from women seeing men advertise products intended for them is fierce, as men walk the catwalk with collagen-filled lips and butt implants, sporting one-piece swimsuits and sports bras that show off all their male assets while not showing how the suits would look on women. Women who buy things have been nothing short of appalled. The purpose of putting clothing on models is to show potential customers how garments would look on them. Putting women's clothes on male bodies, whether it be swimsuits, lingerie, dresses, blouses, or even man-sized women's shoes, does nothing of the sort. It's a wonder why companies make their money by selling women's products to women are working so hard to show women how great these products would look on men. What a time we live in. They're actively antagonizing their customer base. Yeah, I've been forwarded. We've been getting a lot of these too. AI is taking the vocals of songs or the vocal, like we've been sent a few times what's floating around there on the internet, the Elvis version of Baby Got Back from Sir Mix-a-Lot. I've had more than a few people send me that. AI can take, how do you explain this, Fast Eddie? I don't want to overly complicate this for people that don't know what I'm talking about. They can take the sound of Elvis, like AI can replicate Elvis's voice, and then put the lyrics to another song. I got this about right. So you take the lyrics of another song and you put it into the program, and it will spit back out sounding as though it's Elvis singing the lyrics of another song. Is that,
yes?
I explained it that well?
I think so. It's like that audio imprint. Everything's digital, man. So
Yeah.
like that audio imprint of Elvis's voice can be taken digitally and made to say these words. You ready?
Let's do it.
Oh, well, I take blood and I cannot lie. You are the brothers I can't deny. That when a girl walks in with an itty bitty waist and around in your face, you get strong. You get strong. Oh, you get strong. Deep in the jeans she's wearing, I looked and I can't stop staring. Baby got back.
So that's meant to sound, does that sound like Elvis to you?
It does, yeah.
That's meant to replicate Elvis's voice singing Sir Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back.
Yes.
That's, by the way, so there are more serious implications about AI, and then there's just the grab-ass nonsense.
Absolutely.
So there's both. There's some very benign ridiculousness, and then there's severe moral and ethical challenges with it. Bob Iger dismisses out of hand that Disney is involved in the culture war. He gave a big interview yesterday to CNBC. Let's hear a little of that.
What about DeSantis, who's going to be on the hustings, so to speak, for the next year? And he's made this a part of his campaign, attacking Disney, saying it's a woke corporation. We've put the company on a pedestal, but they've really embraced the idea of getting the sexualized content in the program line that I'm not willing to cross. I mean, that's what he said. I quoted DeSantis there. How do you respond to that?
Well, so far, what we've said publicly is that we are concerned that he has decided to retaliate against the company for a position the company took on pending legislation in that state. And frankly, the company was within its right, even though I'm not sure it was handled very well, it was within its right to speak up on an issue, constitutionally protected right of free speech.
Nobody disputes that.
And to retaliate against the company in a way that would be harmful to the business was not something that we could sit back and tolerate. And so we have filed a lawsuit to protect our First Amendment rights there and to protect our business, frankly. The other issues that you referenced, look, the last thing that I want for the company is for the company to be drawn into any culture wars. You know, we've operated for, almost 100 years as a company, making product that we actually are proud of in terms of its impact on the world. You know, I joke every once in a while we're there to manufacture fun.
Well,
we're there to tell great stories.
I know, but you can't be happy when there's literally Nazis standing outside the front gates of the park.
That was horrifying, quite frankly, and it's concerning to me that anyone
literally
would
Nazis.
Encourage a.
Are those still a thing? By the way, I mean, not for nothing. I don't want to relitigate this, but I mean, Walt Disney himself had. Never mind. He doesn't want Disney involved in the culture wars. If I know, I have friends that just went to Disney, just took their children to Disney. And there are men literally, have you seen the photos? There are men literally dressed as princesses. I mean, this from the Federalist. Disney executives admit, of course we're grooming your children. One Disney executive boasted about her not at all secret gay agenda and efforts at adding queerness to children programming, leaked in audio published to investigative journalist Chris Rufo. LaToya Raveneau, an executive producer for Disney Television Animation, said, our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my, not at all secret gay agenda. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness. No one would stop me, and no one was trying to stop me. And that story goes on. There can be no doubt. And Bob Iger pretending as though it doesn't exist. I can appreciate maybe he's trying to stamp it out. Maybe he is. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I appreciate what he says. We have this legacy of hundreds of years of entertaining children and bringing you fun and magic and blah, blah, blah. Yes, you do. But now I take my young child to Disney and he's greeted by a man with a beard pretending to be a princess. You are engaging in the culture war, sir. You are trying to sexualize and confuse our children if you allow that to continue. And we will fight you, and Ron DeSantis is right to continue to call you out. Yeah, you have freedom of speech. Do what you want, but you're not going to continue to reap the benefits of taxpayer support in a state that's run by people who want their tax monies not to support and benefit that kind of thing. Makes total sense to me. The Democrat mantra has officially become, men make the best women. Much like Jews on the issue of Israel, I don't understand how women vote Democrat. I don't understand how Jews vote Democrat. I just don't, because the Democrat Party stands for your extinction. The Democrat Party stands with people who want your extinction, or at least your irrelevancy. Think about that.
Somebody give me a doctor. You better call up the ambulance. I'm deep in shock. Oh, Lordy, baby, I can hardly walk. Somebody give me a doctor. Somebody give me a doctor.
It's been a while since we've checked in on Dr. Marty Makary, Johns Hopkins professor, New York Times bestseller, The Price We Pay, What Broke American Healthcare and How to Fix It. He's a Fox News contributor, too. Dr. Makary, welcome back, my friend.
Good to be with you, Chris.
Here's a shocking headline yesterday. I've already talked about this morning, and I'm trying to not fly into a fit of rage, but rather now just be drippingly sarcastic. I know you'll appreciate how shocking it is, too. Headline from the Washington Post: Americans really did drink more during the pandemic, new data shows, and alcohol-related deaths skyrocketed. U.S. consumption of alcohol, which had already been increasing for years, accelerated during the pandemic as Americans grappled with stress and isolation. Breaking news, Doctor.
Well, we've been warning about this the whole time. We warn that if you take a low-risk individual and put restrictions on them, you're going to see an overall net harm from the restrictions. But what's interesting is that we're learning about this now. We're just a month ago, we got the suicide data from last year. Just yesterday, we got the CDC data on developmental disorders skyrocketing among young children. Why are we getting this information now? The suicide data was 2 years late. I mean, so there is clearly a weaponization of the release of data. And if we would have had the data in real time, all these COVID controversies would have been settled. The data would have been very clear. They had it. And this is a pattern. You know, the data on natural immunity never released. The data on COVID vaccine complications never shared. They never looked into the VAERS database. They didn't want people to know. And privately, Chris, when I talked to public health officials, they basically had the attitude, look, the public is too stupid to understand this stuff, and they may choose to not follow our instructions if they get the data. Yeah, which is a running theme. I mean, we heard that back during the Obamacare debate. That little troll that was involved in writing Obamacare said the American people were too stupid to understand the nuances of the law. They continue to talk about us that way. Just broadly speaking, you can't help, if you're honest, you can't help but look back on that time now and see that a lot of fear was pushed on us to get us to behave a certain way, even though they knew that a lot of it wasn't true. Maybe then. I don't want to assign nefarious goals or ambitions to everyone. I do believe earnestly there were a lot of people very afraid and didn't quite understand what was going on at first. I just don't know what window of time you give that, Doctor. I think there were good people who were concerned and couldn't figure it out. But at what point do you think we had at least a firm enough hand to not be so totalitarian in our behavior? Well, I agree with you, Chris. I'm like you. I see the best in people, and I give people the benefit of the doubt. And I think these public health leaders started off with good intentions. These are people who love the country and who want to help people. But they lived in such a bubble. They were so disconnected from children, for example, outside the doors of my hospital at Johns Hopkins in inner city Baltimore. When you shut down the school and you tell a kid who's at no risk of COVID because they're young and healthy that they're going to have to cover their face and take an iPad and, use an iPad from home. It never happened. Kids never logged on. They never showed up in school again. And these public health officials lived in such a bubble in the suburbs of Boston and Washington, D.C., with their lavish country clubs and their tutors and private schools that were open. They went out and socialized freely as they told the country to shut it down. So where I think we went wrong is we used people who were so disconnected and we centralized all power with them. And then the key was they were able to censor any other opinion or downplay them or downthrottle them. If you saw the documents that came out just this week on Dr. Fauci, there was an email that was basically totally redacted when there was a FOIA request. NIH did not abide by the FOIA request. They did not release this document. It just came out this week. Fauci was concerned about the lab leak. So when you look at this pandemic, I think it's reasonable for someone to be interested in the concept that it was preventable, that it was the result of careless lab experiments, that it could have been avoided. That's a reasonable topic. And that was taboo, of course. That was something we weren't allowed to talk about.
What has it done to the business, the art, whatever you want to call it, medicine? I know there is some artistry to it. There is obviously science to it and the business of it too. What's it done? I think it's sown deep mistrust in medicine, which is not something we can afford in this country, to not trust public health officials and our doctors. I don't like walking into a doctor's office now giving them the skunk eye, like, are you on my side or not? I think that's what this has done, at least to me. I'll speak for myself.
Yeah, it is. It is one of the major problems that's going to live with us after the pandemic. Is you can't lie to people on 10 major topics of COVID and then expect them to come in and just do what you say in the doctor's office. And I think it's good that some people are asking questions. It's not good that we have kids not getting regular child immunizations right now. But when a pregnant woman comes in for a new, evaluation with the OB, and the OB starts the visit by saying, okay, well, where are you on your COVID schedule? You only got 3 doses. I need to get you up to date with the 4th. No. Show me the data. People are good to ask questions. And to answer your question, what's happening within the medical field? Unfortunately, we haven't really learned our lesson where we need to have more of an open forum. It's become more tribal. The idea of, in the past, it was like, that doctor has an opinion, I don't subscribe to it. Now they're using the general cultural war tools and weapons to say, that guy is saying something I don't like. He needs to be removed, fired, suspended, all social media taken down, censored, and we need to ostracize and excoriate that person. Look at the Stanford advisor that came to help Trump.
Yes.
I mean, he was excoriated by the medical field, and he was right. He was right in the end. We're seeing the same thing now with transgender research. All the reasonable people who are balanced and ethical and moderate, they've all been run out of town, and now it's dominated by a cancel culture of activists.
Has that transgender? I don't mean to go too down the rabbit hole on this subject, but I do have to just generally ask: children's hospitals and sort of the business. I mean, it seems like from what I've read, it's already a multi-billion-dollar industry. Bringing in minor children, young children, and giving them drugs and perhaps even surgeries to quote transition to another gender. Is that becoming a big business in medicine? Is that what we're watching, or do people genuinely believe this is something that they can treat in medicine?
I think the medical field is divided. I think there are a lot of doctors who are saying this is crazy, but they can't say anything. You can't say anything. Look at Dr. Michael Joyner, a great doctor at Mayo Clinic. This guy is the world leader in exercise physiology. He's a distinguished, tenured senior professor who's published New England Journal trials and all sorts of great work. He got fired by the Mayo Clinic a few weeks ago for saying that testosterone treatment in transgender women is not fair in women's sports. And Mayo Clinic said he was out of line with prescribed messaging. That's the sort of totalitarianism we have right now. That's what I'm worried about. We've got to keep our universities and academic centers as the one last bastion for free speech in America. And if we're going to start crossing that line, it's going to have a lot of implications. Now, I went to a medical conference, and about half the presentations there were on something about transgender medicine. It was a surgical conference, and I'm thinking, this is like 1/1000th of the care we provide.
Where is that? If I may interrupt and ask you, where do you think that comes from this fast? I mean, I understand the politics of it. It's like something happened in the last 2 years where a switch was flipped, and it seems like it's all we're talking about now. Can you explain it from a medical point of view in that community? Why is this singular obsession on the subject all of a sudden?
I think there's an extreme liberal Democrat leadership core in the medical establishment. This is sort of an unwritten rule that if you go to the medical societies and look at who's leading them, 99% of these folks have this sort of bleeding heart liberal mentality. which, I welcome that. That's fine. I don't have to agree with someone politically. But now they want to do this virtue signaling that they are the champions for these underrepresented groups in America. Again, I don't mind that either. That's a good thing. But they basically say, we welcome all research on these topics. And when those research papers get submitted, they get prioritized in the conferences. So right now it's just dominating the public debate. I mean, I'm in the National Academy of Medicine, which is one of the hardest organizations, to get into in science. And they just submitted a survey that says we're going to change our whole mission and vision statement to focus on health equity. And I'm thinking, okay, that's an important topic, but it's one of like 100 important topics in science, like curing cancer and disease.
Yes, which seems to be taking a back seat. Marxism is the destruction of high-functioning ecosystems. It's just true everywhere. I mean, it's the same thing with climate. I don't mean to drag you into that debate, but it's the same. People say 98% of climate scientists agree. It's like, what's that supposed to mean? What does that mean? There are doctors and scientists and people in fields that disagree and debate. It is not. It's the notion of science and the scientific method and debating science and medicine that's no longer welcome. That's crazy. Dr. Marty Makary with us from Johns Hopkins. If I may, just because it's grabbing headlines, I suspect like everything else, when you're talking about materials that are carcinogens or potentially identified as carcinogens, you're talking about the volume consumed. The World Health Organization now has this big explosive headline, aspartame, that's in it's an artificial sweetener in sodas, your diet sodas. People drink buckets and buckets of diet soda in this audience. And so people are now thinking, what does that mean, doctor? What do you know of this, if anything, this study?
Well, first of all, you can give almost anything in ultra-high megadoses in mice and induce tumors. So that's one thing to consider. The second thing is aspartame has been around for 50 years. We have not seen any strong studies that have demonstrated cancer from aspartame or artificial sweeteners. Now, there may be a small association there. I mean, we can't rule it out. But sugar is far worse than artificial sweeteners. Sugar kills people. These sugary drinks that kids grow up on and people eat nonstop, they get obese in part from that high glucose glycemic load. So sugar is worse than aspartame. And I'm not a fan of aspartame over other natural sweeteners because aspartame tastes so sweet, people get a craving, and then they go out and binge eat on sugars afterwards. But it's not the cancer risk that I'm concerned about. It's just the fact that the best things you can eat are natural things, including, I think I favor those natural sweeteners, stevia, agave fruit, monk fruit. Those are more natural sweeteners that don't trick the body into thinking, hey, your pancreas, you're not going to get a big sugar load here. You're just tasting something sweet. So you don't get the craving with the other sweeteners as you do with artificial sweeteners.
What's the official ruling on people and weight, people that battle weight? I know I do. I overeat, and I know that I do. But I wonder, are people predisposed? Has medicine definitively decided whether people are predisposed to carry weight versus keep weight off? Has that been effectively studied and a consensus built around it?
It's interesting because everyone thinks they're an expert in what causes obesity. Nobody would say, I can tell you exactly how to build a rocket ship. But with obesity, everyone tells those of us in medicine, this is exactly the truth when it comes to obesity. The reality is it's related to the microbiome, which is shaped by many things, the bacteria that line your gut, everything you do in life and childhood. It's in part genetic, and it's driven largely by the total glycemic load, driven by things like simple sugars. So the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is switch to non-sugary drinks. Drink water is what I tell a lot of patients. That's sort of the biggest bang for the buck.
Drink water, you say?
Drink water. That's sort of the easiest, lowest hanging fruit in how you can lose weight is just switch from sugary drinks to drinking water. That's what I recommend to many of my patients. And of course, be careful of the nighttime high glycemic sugary eating.
I'll let you go on this question just because I always feel better about myself when I get somebody who is in medicine to admit to me their guilty pleasure. What is the thing you eat for you that you shouldn't, that you know you shouldn't, is bad for you, but you can't resist it, Dr. Marty Makary?
Well, when I have my cereal, I do like to put some Fruity Pebbles cereal on top of it so we can keep between us.
Fruity Pebbles. We got him, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Marty Makary, Johns Hopkins professor, New York Times bestseller, and a Fox News contributor. Always loved catching up, doctor. Thank you. Okay, let me tell you, My Pillow has been absolutely outstanding to sleep on these last few weeks. The new My Pillow 2.0, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. I sleep like a baby. Between the Giza Dream Sheets I'm sleeping on, the My Pillow body pillow that I keep tucked in between my knees and on my arm every night, between that and the My Pillow 2.0, this brilliant new pillow with the heat dissipating fabric that keeps the pillow smooth and cool to the touch the whole night, tremendous. I love it. Even Dean now loves his My Pillow dog bed so much, he spends most of his time sleeping on it in the office. You go to mypillow.com today, and you use my name, Chris Podcast. That's the promo code, Chris Podcast. When you do that, you save up to 66% on everything on the website, whether it's the slippers or the towels or the pillows or the anything. But on the pillow specifically, the My Pillow 2.0, you'll get a free My Pillow 2.0 when you order one if you use my name, Chris Podcast, as the promo code. So you can call them, you can go online. Either way, use the name Chris Podcast, and know this, that everything you buy at mypillow.com comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. These are American-made products, every bit of it, American-made. And they are proud of what they stand behind as a product, and I can tell you they're really well-made quality products. So look, are they the cheapest products? Of course they're not. People get mad sometimes because they think the price point is a little higher. I understand. I mean, like, no pressure. I'm not telling you got to go buy it, but I'm just telling you, you get what you pay for. So My Pillow products are really high quality, and they're made here in the country, and they're guaranteed to last. So, you know, you can buy something cheaper that'll fall apart on you, and you'll have to buy it again and spend equal amounts of money, or buy a really quality American-made product right now at mypillow.com and save using my name, Chris Podcast, or call My Pillow today if you'd rather. 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056. They say her concert tour, I'm not kidding, the Federal Reserve has just announced that the Taylor Swift concert tour is single-handedly boosting economies around the country. Ticket sales for Taylor Swift concerts have been so explosive, one Federal Reserve office said the pop superstar is single-handedly helping fuel the national tourism industry. Central Bank this week releasing what they call their beige book, in which the Philadelphia Federal Reserve officials reported hotel bookings rose, showing the strongest growth since the beginning of the pandemic, and that's thanks to Taylor Swift's show dates. Despite the slowing recovery in tourism in the region overall, one contact highlighted that May was the strongest month for hotel revenue in Philadelphia since the onset of the pandemic, in large part due to an influx of guests for Taylor Swift concerts in the city. 8 times a year, this thing called the Beige Book compiles summaries of how the economy is doing in different parts of the United States. The document then published before the Federal Reserve Committee meeting, in which monetary policies like interest rate decisions are discussed. This is not the first time a government agency has credited Taylor Swift with boosting local businesses. Earlier this month, Cincinnati officials credited Taylor Swift and the Eras Tour with helping downtown hotels gross more than $2.6 million, and surrounding Hamilton County hotels gross more than $5.3 million. Taylor Swift is a force to be reckoned with, says Julie Calvert, president and CEO of the tourism group Visit Cincinnati, in a statement. The economic impact Swift creates is staggering as fans travel from far and wide to attend her concerts, filling hotels, restaurants, and local attractions. Swift's influence on tourism is a testament to her ability to captivate audiences and drive economic growth. Last month, Chicago's tourism and marketing operation said the first weekend in June when she came to Chicago broke hotel occupancy records thanks to her 2 sold-out shows at Soldier Field. Data from the concert tracking group Polestar shows that her tour, Eras, has already grossed more than $300 million, with average ticket prices at more than $250. It projects that Taylor Swift will reach the $1 billion mark next year. And by the way, she just announced she's now going on a European leg of that tour, Fast Eddie.
So she's going to bring up the economy in Europe now next.
So apparently if we just deploy Taylor Swift city to city globally for the next year or two, she will do more to stimulate the economy than anyone at the Federal Reserve or anybody in Washington, D.C.
America,
That's
saving the ass of the world since the beginning of our founding.
Berks County, Pennsylvania's own Taylor Swift. You know what's remarkable, too? Her mother, they call her, I think they call her Grandma Swift or Mama Swift. I forget what they call her. My daughter refers to her as something. She travels with her. Taylor Swift's mother goes on these stops, city to city. Watching her take her seat, usually the stars or celebrities or athletes or whatever that might be in attendance have kind of a little tented off, shielded area on the floor of the arena usually to watch, kind of in sort of a special seat that's sort of blocked off from view from most people. Watching her mother come out from the tunnel of the arena and then security escorts her to this, blocked off tented area on the floor of the arena. The girls that mob her mother for pictures, like it's the most, I've never seen anything like it. Never mind Taylor Swift, her mom. Because I guess then what her mother does is somehow picks people out of the audience for Taylor Swift to come up during the concert and give something to her or whatever.
Okay.
So I don't know if they're all angling for that or they just wanted to. I asked my daughter, I said, what is the deal with the mother? And she said, because she gave birth to the most talented woman that ever lived. That's why. Unquote.
She's still a woman.
Yep, she is. It's amazing. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you'll check out the Harump Society. I have a new edition of the Harump Society coming out today, by the way. I do it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Join us. You'll love it. Great comments in the comment section. We'll see you Monday.
The Chris DeGaulle Show Podcast.